Hello everyone, welcome to the daily newspaper analysis of the Shankar IAS Academy, brought to you by the Civil Media team, and this is Abhinaya Sampath for the today's current affairs articles discussion for the date of 3rd January 2025. So these are the topics for discussion. The first article, titled Rajaji Tiger from the Indian Express, discusses about the basic facts of the Rajaji Tiger Reserve. Next article, titled On the Road to Kumbh Mela from the Indian Express, discusses about the importance of the one of the most important spiritual gathering, the Kumbh Mela, and their basics on it. The next article, titled Ladki Bahin scheme, talks about the vital scheme of Maharashtra, which is the Ladki Bahin scheme, which is important for women empowerment, and this article is from the Hindu. And final article, titled The GM Crops, discusses about the concerns related to the GM crops, and we'll be seeing basics on it, and this article is from the Indian Express. So without any much further delay, let's get into the articles discussion one by one along with prelims practice question. So now let us move on to the first news. The news titled Experts on GM Crop Panel to declare conflict of interest. So this article discusses about the revision of the rules by the Environmental Ministry on the GM crops of India, and about the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, and also this article discusses about the split verdict when it comes to the GM crop of mustard, and also addressing the issue of bringing a national policy for the GM crops in India. So in light of this article, we would be seeing the basics of the GM crops and about the committee associated with it. So what is GM crop? A GM crop is nothing but genetically modified crop where the plants are within altered DNA through genetic engineering. So looking into the steps when it comes to creating a GM crop, first a gene is identified. So it can be a bacteria, it can be a plant or an organism where a gene is being identified, and that gene is being isolated or it need to be extracted. So for example, you can cut that gene in a specific part to get it isolated or get it extracted, and then the gene would be transferred into a vector. A vector is basically a carrier. So for example, we can take virus, where the gene can be inserted into a virus for it to be acting as a vector to be carried on without causing any harm, and that gene would be inserted into a or transferred into a plant cell. So this is how genetically modified crops are been created. So this crop is being created to bring in desired traits such as to bring in pest resistance, drought tolerance, improved nutrition, and better growth. So different genetically modified crops are created for different reasons, such as the pest resistance, such as standing as an herbicide resistant, trying to be a drought tolerant crop, and also to have improved nutrition or to have bring in deficiencies of vitamins and so on. So these are the desired outcome when it comes to the creation of genetically modified crops. Now let us look into few GM crops in India. So in India, only BT cotton has been approved in 2002. In 2019, the coordinating committee, that is the GEAC, which we would be seeing in the later slide, it recommended and approved for the commercialization of BT brinjal, but yet it hasn't been commercialized yet. It hasn't been come for the commercialization or in the market. It has just been recommended or approved, but it has not been given for commercialization, whereas the BT cotton is being approved as well as it has been commercialized in India. So BT cotton is the genetically modified crop of India which is for commercialization. So looking into the varieties, they involve the gene or the bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis. Here this is the gene which has been used here, and this BT cotton is a pest resistant cotton. So this gene is being used particularly to resist a pest called bollworm or a pink bollworm. So this is the functions when it comes to this crop. The varieties of this crop can be typed as Bollard 1 and Bollard 2, and this was a question in one of the UPSC prelims. Now looking into other GM crops where There are trials and researches going on for their approval, for their commercialization, such as the sugarcane, mustard, chickpea and so on. And in 2022, the Dara mustard hybrid 11 is still having their pending for their approval of commercialization. So these are the crops when it comes to GM crops in India. So now let us move on to the significance of GM crops. First is the their ability to be resistant to many crop problems, that is the pest resistance, drought tolerance and trying to give a high yield. So for example, here the Dara hybrid, the Dara mustard hybrid is a herbicide resistant crop. Through the involvement of bringing in a genetically modified crop, there are more food on less land, as it would be bringing high yield even with the less crops present in a land. So it brings down the issue of using of land or hectares or acres in a larger amount. Next would be bringing an enhanced nutrition. So for example, the golden rice, which is a GM crop which is being used in Africa, where there is a deficiency for vitamin A. So this GM crop is highly helpful to bring in the nutritional content. Next is to have a reduced pesticide use. Here the pest resistant crops minimize the pesticide resilience and it promotes sustainable farming. So here, more than the crops getting affected by the pesticides, it tries to be a pest resistance crop, so that there is lesser usage of chemicals and fertilizers, as it is more pest resistant in nature. Next is bringing in economic benefits such as the higher yields, reduced losses and increasing the farmer income ultimately, and having a climate change adaptation. Here it tries to be tolerant to extreme conditions like the droughts and floods. But there are equally concerns about the GM crops. Here looking into the environmental risk, first it would be a loss of biodiversity. Here the GM crops may outcompete natural species. So more than having preferences for natural species and trying to extract their gene from the natural species, it can lead to a loss of biodiversity. Next is contamination. Here if cross pollination happens, it can affect the other non-GM crops, losing the biodiversity ultimately by affecting the natural species. So here it brings in the emergence of superweeds. So superweeds are nothing but it becomes more resistant to the herbicides. So more being resistant to the pests, they've been resistant to the chemicals and fertilizers, where it doesn't bring any differences even the GM crops being used. Next is health concerns. First, it brings an allergic reaction, it can have a foreseen health effect. Next is herbicide residues. It can bring in potential human risk at the later stages of the crop and have economic and social issues. Here, reliance on multinational corporations like the Bayer or Monsanto. So Monsanto is a biotechnology company which is being used for the commercialization of the BT cotton. So there is immense reliance when it comes to the MNCs. Here the patent seeds can have an issue, high cost for farmers can become an issue. There can have regulatory and ethical issues where inadequate safety testing can be problem, where there can be insufficient regulations during the approval or during the assessment or evaluation of the crop, and it can ultimately tamper or hurt our nature. Not just for the GM crops, but there are a lot of allegations and against and critics for the involvement of GM crops. So oppositions from the activists and many environmental groups are raising their voices, and concern about the risk and lack of transparency during the regulation and creating of the GM crops are being taken as a concern, and of course concern about the corporate control over the agriculture sector has been a greater concern. Now let us have a small basic understanding about the coordinating committee when it comes to the GM crops. They are the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. They come under the Ministry of Environmental, Forest and Climate Change along with the Environmental Protection Act. So their responsibilities can be known to bring appraisal on large scale use of hazardous and microorganisms and recombinants. So recombinants are nothing but using genetically modified organisms or their DNA technology, and they also oversee experimental field trials. So I hope this article is very clear on understanding the basics of GM crops. Now let us move on to a prelims practice question. So this is the question and let us see the answer for it. The statement 1 and correct as the genetic engineering appraisal functions under this ministry, not as per the Water Act but as per the Environmental Protection Act, and genetic appraisal committee can take punitive actions, and that authority is not just only for the National Green Tribunal. So only such statements are a bit too extreme. Now moving on to the next article titled On Road to Maha Kumbh, the 84 Pillars of Faith. It's a symbolic way to attain moksha. So this article discusses about the Maha Kumbh Mela, which is going to be happening from the January 13 to February 26 at Prayagraj in Allahabad, which is one of the most important and the most largest spiritual gatherings of our country, India. So in sight of this festival, the Uttar Pradesh government is installing 84 pillars of red sandstone, which symbolizes the cycle of existence called the pillars of faith, and those red sandstones are engraved with 108 names of Lord Shiva in 4 sections representing the spiritual milestones. So in regarding of this article, let us see few basics about the Maha Kumbh Mela. Maha Kumbh Mela, a sea of faith, is one of the most important and the most significant and the most world's largest festival, which is a Hindu pilgrimage major festivals of India. And this festival is conducted in 4 sacred sites. It rotates among places of Prayagraj in Allahabad, which is in Uttar Pradesh, then in Haridwar, which is in Uttarakhand, then in Nashik, which is in Maharashtra, and Ujjain, which is in Madhya Pradesh. So the Maha Kumbh Mela happens in these 4 sacred sites. So this Maha Kumbh Mela happens according to different cycles of occurrence at different places, determined by a specific positioning of the astrological cycle. So the first Purna Kumbh Mela, which happens every 12 years at all the 4 sites, it involves gathering of millions of people coming in for having spiritual attainment and bathing in the sacred rivers. So Ujjain would be in the banks of the river Shipra, Nashik would be in the banks of the river Godavari, and Haridwar would be in the banks of the river Ganges. So the next occurrence of Kumbh Mela would be Ardh Kumbh Mela, which is known as the half Kumbh Mela, where it happens in every 6 years, primarily in Haridwar and Prayagraj. And the most important and the most auspicious one, which is the Maha Kumbh Mela, which happens every 144 years at Prayagraj, which is the most important one, which happens after the Purna Kumbh Mela. So this signifies the rotation of the planet Jupiter, and also it happens at the confluence of the 3 main rivers, which is the Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati, which is been an invisible river. So this happens at the confluence of those 3 major rivers, which is in Prayagraj. Now looking into their key features, which is very simple to understand. First, it's a act as a pilgrimage and rituals for mass people bathing in the sacred rivers for purification, liberation or moksha. Then looking into their scale and duration, millions of participants, almost 400 million. So the article discusses how there is expected crowd of 40 to 45 crore for the Maha Kumbh Mela. So it involves larger number of people gathering together to celebrate the faith, and it's a major cultural significance where it brings on religious discussion, devotional music, brings in art and culture, dance performances and mass feedings, and a lot of debates and discussions and perspectives to be known around the cultural celebration. Now looking into the economic impact, these are also very simple to understand. They first boost the local economy, bringing in hospitality, transportation, in enhancing the tourism, increasing the retail sector's participation through their involvement in the market and benefiting them. Then next is employment generation, creates numerous temporary jobs. Now moving on to the environmental consideration, to involve the river cleanliness, there has been measures taken to maintain the sanctity of the Ganges, which is the Ganga Parharis. initiative. Looking into the sustainable practice, there has been a lot of focus on waste management and eco-friendly practices. So the Maha Kumbh Mela is considered one of the intangible cultural significance by the UNESCO in 2017. So I hope this article is clear, and now let us move on to the prelims practice question. So this is the question, and the answer would be 2 and 3 here. It is scheduled from this date, not in Haridwar but in Prayagraj. The Uttar Pradesh government plans to install the 84 red sandstone pillars, and the Maha Kumbh Mela is held in every 12 years at the confluence of Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati rivers. So only these two statements are right. Moving on to the next article titled Ladki Bahin scheme government to act against bogus beneficiaries. So this article discusses about the one of the vital women empowerment scheme of Maharashtra called the Mukhyamantri Mahajan Ladki Bahin Yojana scheme. So this scheme is very vital and important for women empowerment when it comes to having financial and socio-economic support, so that women can lead a dignified and independent life. So the article discusses about how there are bogus beneficiaries, that is the ineligible beneficiaries, and concerns has been raised on this scheme. So there has been scrutiny among the complaint driven concerns, but not scrutiny on the total general auditing of the beneficiaries. So here both the income tax department and the transport department are in collaboration to know about the bogus beneficiaries, and this is what has been discussed in the article. So in light of this article, we will be seeing basics about this scheme. So moving on to the scheme, the Ladki Bahin scheme is been initiated under the Women and Child Development Ministry, and it has been launched on August of 2023. So looking into their main objectives, they empower women in bringing a financial support, which is one of the important objective of the scheme. Next is to bring an improvement of quality of life for women and having access to the basic needs and resources. Next is to promote gender equality and also encouraging women to participate in the other socio-economic activities so that there is gender equality. And finally, fostering of women's independence through their having financial support and trying to lead them in an independent life and in a very more dignified manner. Now looking into the eligibility criteria, first, to get the scheme benefits, the member should be, or the women should be, the Maharashtra resident, and looking into their annual income, their family annual income shouldn't be more than 2.5 lakhs. They should not be employed in any government or been a income tax payer, and the beneficiaries can be included under the age of 21 to 65 years of women. Looking into the key benefits here, in the financial support, there has been monthly stipend of 1500 given for the scheme beneficiaries. Then they are provided with free LPG cylinders, which is 3 per year. And looking into the educational support, they are given fee waivers. So girls from the community of OBC and economically weaker section girls are being given waivers for their higher education. So waivers are nothing but giving an exemption from a fee to be paid. And looking into their inclusivity, all women are eligible who are can be married, who can be widowed, who can be a divorcee, who can be destitute, and so on. Now looking into the required documents, so since the article revolves around the concern of ineligible beneficiaries, these are the required documents which will be highly scrutinized when there is a complaint driven. First, they would be looking into the Aadhaar card for their identification. Then they need to have a bank details linked to the Aadhaar card. Then they should have an age proof, which can be any document, which can be birth certificate and so on. Then looking into their residence proof, they need to have a residence certificate, should have an income proof, need to have a caste certificate if it is applicable. Looking into their family details can involve the ration card and having a passport size photo. So now moving on to the application process, first it is preferred through online, through the website, their official website, or through the Nari Shakti Doot app. So this app is created under the Women and Child Development Ministry, where this app is specifically used for women to know about the government schemes, initiatives, any policy changes for the women, and being bringing in the gap of digital divide for women especially. Now looking through the offline mode who are not able to apply through online, they can take assistance from the Anganwadi workers or the Gram Sevaks in the district level or the state level, and the required documents need to be submitted. So when knowing about a scheme, these are the most important details to be understood to understand any scheme, such as which ministry they come from, what are the eligibility criteria, what are the documents required, and the concerns regarding in it. So I hope this scheme is clear. So let us move on to the prelims practice question. What is the age limit for the eligibility under the Ladki Bahin Yojana? And the answer is option B, 21 to 65 years. Moving on to the next article titled, Did Rajaji Tiger Walk 500 km to Jammu? So this article discusses about a dispersed tiger from the Rajaji Tiger Reserve, which is in the Uttarakhand, where the tiger was spotted in the borders of the Jammu and Kashmir. So there has been debate regarding to the authentication and the survey of those tiger which has been spotted. So in light of this article, we would be seeing the basics about the Rajaji Tiger Reserve. So the Rajaji Tiger Reserve is one of the largest protected forests and a wildlife sanctuary which is in the Uttarakhand, which comprises the district of Haridwar, Dehradun and Pauri Garhwal. So they are also part of the Shivalik Hills, which is the Himalayan foothills. So the Rajaji Tiger Reserve got its name from our first Governor General, Mr. C. Rajagopalachari. Now looking into their establishment, they are declared under the Tiger Reserve of 2015 under the Project Tiger, and they were formed by merging the three sanctuaries, which is the Rajaji, Motichor and Chilla sanctuaries into one called as Rajaji Tiger Reserve. Now looking into the biodiversity of Rajaji Tiger Reserve, when it comes to the species count, they almost home for 50 plus mammals, 315 birds, 40 reptiles and 60 amphibians. So this report has been largely taken from the survey by the Wildlife Institute of India. Now looking into their fauna count, they are home for Bengal tiger, Asian elephant, leopard, sloth bear, spotted deer, samba deer and wild boar, along with the Himalayan black bear. And looking into their flora counts, they are home for a lot of sal forest, teak trees, tropical and subtropical deciduous forest. Looking into the tiger conservation in the Rajaji Tiger Reserve, according to the All India Tiger Report, which took tiger population census in 2022, it is home for 19 tigers, which is part of the western part of the Rajaji Tiger Reserve. They are also home for elephant corridor, which is a home for the Asian elephants. So the Rajaji Tiger Reserve connects with the Corbett Tiger Reserve habitats. So the Jim Corbett National Park is one of the most important national parks from the Nainital district of Uttarakhand. So along with being a tiger reserve, it is also home for Asian elephants, being an elephant corridor. So looking into their conservation role, they facilitate tiger movements across the forest division along with the Tiger Conservation Authority, which we will be seeing in the further slide. So there is here engagement of both state and the national level of the coordinating committee when it comes to the tiger reserve and their conservation. Now moving on to their ecological importance, they are part of the terrain arc landscape, a very key biodiversity when it comes for the Rajaji Tiger Reserve. So the terrain arc landscape is characterized with the ecological characteristics of having wetlands, marshy lands, uh, grasslands, having sal forest, having alluvial floodplains, having the Gangetic floodplains, and these are the characteristics for the Terai arc landscape. So the Terai arc landscape is nothing but the Terai region, which includes the lowlands or the foothills of the Himalayas, where it is considered to engage the Himalayan biodiversity hotspot, and at the same time it includes ecological corridors of the Terai region, which includes the northern part of India and also the some southern parts of the Nepal. So the word terra means wetlands or marshy lands. So these are the characteristics of the Terai arc landscape. So there has an initiative to protect the Terai arc landscape, which is called as the Terai arc landscape conservation program. Now looking into the water resources, when it comes to the Rajaji Tiger Reserve, it protects under the watersheds of Ganga and Yamuna, as they have the Gangetic plains also. So having salt forest and a lot of tropical and deciduous forest, they help in the carbon sequestration forest through having mitigation of climate change. Now, looking into tourism and their accessibility, they are one of the most important tourism zones. They are known to be known as the ecological corridor. They involve wildlife safaris, bird watching for many tourist people. They include the popular gates of Chilla, Motichor and Ranipur sanctuaries. Looking into their cultural significance, they involve in ancient temples and stand as a pilgrimage sites. And having recent developments for tiger monitoring, there has been camera traps, GIS based tracking, and on the corridor restoration, they have enhanced the Rajaji Corbett connectivity. So looking into the coordinating authority for the tiger reserve, it comes under the National Tiger Conservation Authority of India, and it is established under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which has been amended recently in 2006. The objective is to strengthen the tiger conservation, which has been implemented under the Project Tiger of 1973. Looking into their structure, they include the chairperson from the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. They include the central minister, and as well as the state minister of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change are included in the state level. And the members include the officials, experts and conservationists related to the tiger reserve. So these are the basics when it comes to the Rajaji Tiger Reserve, and I hope this article is clear for understanding the basic factuals information on a tiger reserve or any wildlife sanctuary or any national park, where this method would be easy to know the details. So let us move on to our prelims question. Consider the following statements about the Rajaji Tiger Reserve. The correct option is B and C, where it was declared under Project Tiger in 2015, and it serves as a carbon sink for mitigating climate change, where these statements are right, and it is located not entirely, which is an extreme statement, and not in Himachal Pradesh but in Uttarakhand. Thank you so much for watching this video until this end. So don't forget to give a like, comment and share this video, and to further not to miss any other contents, subscribe to our channel. Thank you and have a nice day.